Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you can hear me well. My name is Carol Litwin. I am the head of energy at the Global Green Growth Institute. And first of all, before I start my presentation, I would like to thank the arrangers, the Mongolian Renewables Industry Association, for arranging this timely and important forum. I am here to present on some of the global trends around the world. Some of them have been mentioned around auctioning. But before I start the presentation, for those of you who are not familiar with the Global Green Growth Institute, I might like to make a quick just introduction of who we are. Let me see if I can get the technology here. So we're a young institution. We're an international organization with headquarters in Seoul, with a satellite office, with adjoining offices with GCF in Songdo in South Korea. And we work very closely with the GCF as one of the world's largest climate financier. We have 28 member countries around the world. We operate in 27 of those countries, and energy is our largest sector. We have dedicated energy programs in 11 countries, including here in Mongolia, and I'm very proud that we have a very collaborative relationship, particularly with the energy sector regulator here on energy efficiency. We operate in 3 areas. One is on extending affordable access to energy, and this is particularly in countries that have low access, particularly in Africa. We also work on scaling up renewable energy. That is a different area where we work on utility and rooftop solar. And we work in the area of energy efficiency. And our mandate is really around the Paris Agreement and helping countries to scale up and access climate finance. So we support regulatory work in member countries, policy development and planning. We also provide technical assistance for project preparation, and we help to mobilize and structure financing. We do not have a checkbook ourselves, so we do not actually finance the projects, but we help with access, and this is of course one of the reasons why we work so closely with GCF, but also with other fund managers and IFIs. So I'm here to talk about how to scale up renewable energy from what the global experience is. And what we know, looking around the globe, is there are 4 key factors that help countries to scale up. One is, of course, technology prices. There is a significant reduction, particularly around the solar technologies, that countries can benefit. But what we have noticed, not all countries benefit to the same extent, and I will talk about that a little bit later. And of course, procurement, it has already been mentioned. Auctioning is one of the ways to scale up renewable energy, but there are also other policy and regulatory instruments that you can procure solar. So if we look at different procurement methods, auctioning is the extreme on one hand, and sole sourced projects are the extreme on the other hand. They also help countries to access lower technology prices in their countries. I think the technology is switching too fast. I'm going to need some help on switching back. Oh, here we go. Here we go, sorry. And also the project size, and I'll talk a little bit about what countries do to increase the project size, as this also affects the pricing of the projects. And this is particularly pertaining to small countries with smaller networks. The last area that critically affects the size of renewable or scaling up renewable energy in developing countries in particular is related to the management of the network. And here we've often heard words such as smart grids that can help manage the loads between the supply during the day from solar installations to meeting peak demands during evenings, but there are also other real-time management of networks that is very useful to help utilities manage the intermittency and the variability of the loads. So those are the 4 key areas. The last one, I think, deserves more attention. I know here in Mongolia over the last 2 days that I've been here, this has been mentioned by a number of stakeholders as one of the big constraints. And there's certainly attention being focused around batteries, but there are other technologies. So let me take a look at the pricing, the procurement trends around the globe. And we are here very focused around the large-scale installations where there is effectively 2 types of pricing mechanisms that governments use to help scale up renewable energy. And one is, of course, feed-in tariffs, which are administratively set. And what we see is that feed-in tariffs are typically applied in countries in early stage markets. They tend to stay in place maybe a little bit too long, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. The other method used is, of course, competitive procurement, where auctioning is one of the extremes. And in the diagram here, we can see the number of countries that have approved feed-in tariffs, and vis-a-vis the number of countries that have actually applied auctions. And we can see a sharp increase in the auctioning system. Many countries have both. So let's take a look at the pricing trend around auctioning and how that has helped, together with improved technology and higher scale, for countries to access the global renewable technology prices. And what we can see here is a sharp reduction in solar PV prices, but also in wind. In the smaller side, in the smaller diagram, shows the US pricing, and what we can see, what has been driving this is really the cost of the modules coming down, but also the inverters and other costs. Now, the reason for showing this graph here is the blue line shows the global average installation cost, including sole sourcing, auctioning, and all other procurement costs, as compared to the yellow line that only contains auctioning. At any time, auctioning beats any other procurement method. So that was the purpose of showing this slide. So if Mongolia really wanted to scale up renewable energy and benefit from technology pricing, we can actually show that auctioning would be the right way to go. So India is quite famous here in Asia for scaling up renewable energy. Let me see if I can get here. They have set a target for the market at 100 gigawatt by 2022. This is a very big challenge for the market, but also for the network to absorb the variability of the loads. And we can see now that they are, in 2018, they will be approaching 20 gigawatts. Let's take a look at the pricing trends in India. So we can see here in early 2010, the bid tariff was around 16 cents per kilowatt hours. It is now down to 1/4 of that, around 4 in 2017, and now it's gone below 3 cents. So this is what auctioning and large scale, setting an indication of what the size of the market is going to be, attracting a lot of bidders into these auctionings. The other case I wanted to show that maybe some of you may be familiar with, Zambia was the first African country outside of South Africa that applied auctioning. And one of the reasons for this was that the country had been suffering for drought for a number of years. They are highly dependent on hydro, and they had to, when the drought hit them severely in 2015, 14 and 15, they had to start importing massive amounts of electricity to ensure that demand was being met. So the government set a target of 600 megawatts of solar installation, and they started bidding out the first phase, which was a government with standard tender documents, with financing packages. The government supplied the land, but there was also a number of guarantees put in place. The outcome of this package where bidders were not only bidding to supply the solar, but they were actually bidding for the financing package, which was made available to the winning bid. The bid in 2015 came in just above 6 cents. No indexation. Why is this so extraordinary impressive? Is because Zambia is a high-risk country on the one hand. On the other hand, they have a very high-risk sector where the utility is not recovering its costs. So guarantees were put in place to mitigate these risks for the bidders. So that was one of the reasons why the auctioning was so successful. And I would like to do a comparison here, because at the same time as this bidding was going on, the feed-in tariff in Ghana, a lower risk country, was 18 cents. So meaning we had 1/3 of the price actually being achieved in a higher risk country. So opportunities for scale in small countries. Now, most often this has been done around hydro development, particularly in Asia, around the Mekong region. But for a small country, how can the domestic market benefit from scale? The very same project can be built to a larger scale and supply the export market at the same time as the domestic market, given some of the constraints that might apply. So why would a small country want to do this? It's diversity, to achieve scale, but two, it allows the developers and the financiers to diversify risk, reducing the cost of financing. Now, there's a couple of lessons learned here on achieving scale for export. One is, of course, many countries have political PPAs. We know those type of PPAs are not very sustainable. My recommendation would be, if Mongolia is considering the export market, please look at commercial PPAs. That will ensure that there is a sustainability in the commercial arrangements. A couple of other areas that needs to be considered is, of course, the interconnection arrangements and also the physical infrastructure around transmission lines. Adequate demand. The Mekong region benefits from regional trade very much because of different peak demands in the various countries, so these are also things to consider. What we know, the political backing in both countries is extremely important. Let me see if I can actually get the slides move in the right direction here. The last area I would like to talk about, which I know is of interest here in Mongolia, is about the role of storage on the network. And we have produced, we've used from Bloomberg's, we've found pricing on what's actually happened to storage for lithium batteries in this case. And we can see the blue dots is the actual prices received, and the projected cost reductions are in the dotted lines. Now, storage can do a lot more than just storing electricity to meet demand. And there are markets today developed, for instance, in Australia, but also ongoing in the Philippines, that are looking at other types of services that storage battery can provide. Now, this is an evolving technology, but it's also an evolving regulatory and commercial arrangements. It is really important on how the market is regulated and what market incentives that the government wants to provide. So a couple of areas where batteries are very important, and of course matching supply with demand. If you have peak demand during the evenings and you're using solar, battery storage on the grid side can actually help meet peak demand. The second thing is it can smooth the variability and the intermittency of renewable energy, and these two areas are directly supporting of increasing the penetration of renewable energy. There are three areas where battery storage is actually helping the stability of the network. One is to smooth the variability, like I mentioned. The other one is to improve the quality of supply. And what I mean by improving the quality of supply, it can help with voltage fluctuation and frequency variations. It can also help to with blackouts and quickly respond to blackouts or when other generation sources is down. And one of the advantages with batteries is the speed to which it can respond. So recent IRENA reports are actually comparing batteries to storage, and if we are looking at the ability of batteries to respond to blackouts, batteries are clearly to be favored, but it has a cost. So batteries can almost function on the system like an insurance against blackouts. In Australia and in the Philippines now, ancillary services, which is related to frequency control, voltage fluctuations, and ability to respond to blackouts, are being developed. It is still relatively new. The regulator in the Philippines has issued regulations and pricing mechanisms to actually price these benefits. This is an evolving area that I think Mongolia should be watching very carefully. In absence of markets, of course, the regulator will go in and regulate these pricing. From a network perspective, what is really important before embarking on storage, because it's still relatively expensive, my advice would be look at the network needs, do a least cost analysis on different options, because there are other options than battery storage, given the cost. So my conclusions out of the presentation: storage can mitigate the utility's concerns on how to manage the variability of load, but it's not the only technology. It is an evolving technology. There's challenges around the regulatory and the commercial arrangements that is also changing and evolving. Export opportunities is an excellent way of increasing scale of renewable energy. Competitive procurement is critical both for battery storage and renewable energy in order for countries, particularly those with higher risk, to benefit from lower technology pricing. With sole source contracts, you will always face higher prices, and you may not get the best technology to meet your needs. So my advice, you don't want to always go to auctioning, but you do want to do competitive procurement. So with this, I'll thank you very much for listening to us, and if you have questions, I'm happy to discuss afterwards.